placed. Should I start again? So this Parashat is essentially, primarily, almost completely, about the ceremony of atonement when we had a Mishkan, as described in the Torah, Yom Kippur, which has been changed, into prayer, essentially, teshuvah. But it's still about teshuvah in this ceremony. So Leviticus, this book placed in the middle of the Torah, takes place at the point at which the Mishkan has been built and the Israelites are still at Sinai and ready essentially to leave, except they're not, because they don't really know how they're supposed to behave or how they're supposed to remain in attunement with the divine once they leave Sinai. And so Leviticus, the entire book, is about God is calling out Vayikra, and how do we respond, and teaching us, talking about how to respond. And the last several sections have been about, for stretch, they were about boundaries in terms of boundaries and focus in our commitment. And then the one before this, Shemini, is one in which there's a terrible breach, in which Aaron's two eldest sons run forward to offer sacrifice, and they do it in some way that is a breach, and they die. And it's never been clear. There's a lot of writing about this. Some think they actually ascended, others simply that they were killed. But this next parsha is really about the awareness then that we're always going to have lapses. Always. That's just in the nature of things. Some will be, many, if not most, will be unintentional lapses. Others will be intentional. How do we come back? And that's, of course, what Yom Kippur has always remained about. How do we come back in the face of the lapses of the year that has occurred? This one has, the way the Torah sets it up is with particular both power and poignancy, because here is Aaron, high priest, responsible for the entire community, and he's just lost his two older sons, which is pretty major. And yet he's asked to let go of his self-concerns, really, to let go, to be as selfless as can possibly be, to function as chief for the entire community, as high priest in this. But this time, I read it this time and I was really struck that he can't. So he's doing it, but he's in a time of great grief himself. And so I went through the ceremony very slowly, and I'm gonna read out what I wrote about it. I went back to my book for this meditation. I've been going back to my book a lot because I find it very, very powerful. So I'm going to go through really slowly what he's doing, and then I'm going to do a slight meditation with it, just imagery, really. So he has to, the night before, later on, it says, doesn't say in Torah, he's kept up the whole night. He can't sleep. He's not allowed to. Talmud says that. So he's in a heightened state. But in this one, all it says is he dresses in the simplest of linen clothing. And then there are two goats that are sort of offered to him. And they're standing at the tent of meeting, the outside. And he takes lots. And one of them will be one that is sacrificed for the community. And the other one, as we know, goes off into the wilderness. And after he does this, he has also brought a bull and a goat for himself and for his own atonement. And he stands at the main altar, outside the entrance of the tent of meeting, near the entrance. And he slaughters the bull. And I'd like us, think about this in terms of, this is bloody work and takes a lot of physical strength. Presumably he slits the throat. Takes a lot of strength, and there must be blood spurting everywhere. This place smells, this temple. And presumably they have to constantly, not that day, but clean out dung. So it's filled At the same time as there's slaughter going on, it's filled with the essence in many ways of life, blood being, of course, the particular essence. So he takes this blood and he brings it into the inner sanctum. But first he has to light incense, which is in the medium space, the holy, not the Holy of Holies. And he spreads the smoke of the incense in front of him. So he won't be overwhelmed by the sight of God's presence. And he goes in, and from his finger, he dips into the blood. And 7 times he sprinkles the altar, the ark, is what I mean. And then he sprinkles 7 times on the floor. And he comes out. And then and this is for his own atonement, his own sins. And then he goes out and he gets the goat that the community has brought. And he repeats the process. And then he comes back out. And he's now, and the goat the community has brought is one of those 2. He comes back out and he goes to the entrance. And there is the goat that is going out. And he confesses all the sins of the community. And I imagine they're watching. I'm not sure because this is right by the entrance. All the sins. And he sends the goat off. And I'm going to return to that. And then he changes his clothes. The ceremony of atonement is done, actually. And then in new clothes, presumably the whole regalia of the high priest, he offers a burnt offering, his burnt offering and the community's burnt offering. And there's a bit more that happens. And that's it. So I wrote this out, and the sense of, I'm just going to read it again. See him slit the throat of a bull for his own expiation of sin. See him catch the lifeblood in a bowl. Watch him spread the smoking incense in the innermost chamber so that he will not be destroyed by too clearly seeing God, this awesome God of life and death. And what he's returning over and over is life itself. This is a religion that treasures life. And he's offering up this life of the animal instead of his own. But the image is of complete, the way we prostrate ourselves at Yom Kippur, of complete, I'm offering everything. This is what best I can do. To follow you, to be with you. And I think sprinkling the blood, this on his hand and sprinkling the life force back to God. For me, it's an overwhelming image, and I ended it in my contemplation with letting my mind hover around the phrase, Shaviti Hashem L'negdi Tamid. I place God before me always, because that's what he's trying to do then for the year ahead. And it's certainly what he's experiencing. But what I was struck by so much this morning, not yesterday, but this morning, was what it really means with sending off that goat, to confess all one's sins, and then to say, it's gone. I don't have to sit with all of the guilt and all of I should have done it differently. How could I have done this? I can let it go. I've confessed. I've offered up as best I can my promise to do better in the future, and I can let it go. I read somewhere a while ago, I don't know where I read it, that someone went to a major rabbi with this horrible, overwhelming guilt. And the rabbi said, write it out, what you did, piece of paper, fold it up, and go to the kotel and put it into the wall. And that's it. You're done. It's now up to God. It's not yours anymore. Let it go. And I realized this is what it's about. It's the same. And that's the part I never picked up before. Okay. This idea of being able to really say, please, I've done my best. I'm saying I will do my best never to do this again. I'm letting go as much as I can of all that twisting Mitzrayim within me. And I'm turning it over to you. And that's it. And then he changes his clothes, and it's all done. I find this just a staggeringly powerful ceremony. um, in the midst of all of this, as I said, the sense of really offering up, not my life, but the animals, because it's followed by saying you can't eat meat unless it's done as part of a sacrifice of a sin expiation. Could also be well-being, one of thankfulness, but it has to be part of a holy ceremony. Otherwise, you have no right to take the life. You just don't. So anyway, I'm done. It's it. I hope I could convey some of the power of this because I was overwhelmed by it yesterday.